migrate to an urban area because the urban areas are collapsing under that migration. All three are common. All three have no national security implications. All three have a common humanity at its core. We should work together on these.
All right, tell us about your visit to the Pacific. You were, it's been a long time since a World Bank president has been to a country like Australia, to Fiji. The first time, I think your visit to Tuvalu was the first time a president has been there. Why was it so important for you to go to the region? What did you learn? What were the big things you took away?
Learn, I mean, you know, the obvious stuff about the challenges of climate are very visible when you come to a Tuvalu. But I didn't need to go there to see that. That's obvious. I think more important was to meet the people, both the government and young people, and try and understand from their eyes how they see the next couple of decades. In Fiji, it was not just to see Fiji and its opportunities and its challenges. We have just done a health report in Fiji, which is creating a baseline to have a discussion with the government to persuade them to think about non-communicable diseases, what I call the diseases of affluence. Heart trouble, diabetes, blood pressure, has reached a point in Fiji where the average age that you expect to get to in Fiji is now 68 years, and it's not going in the right direction. And I think that's work that needs to change and be done through early diagnosis, through primary health centers, and the like. That's topics of that type that we're discussing with them. But I also got to meet the Pacific Island Forum, which meant I got a chance to meet 10, 12 of them at one go and really see what their challenges are, one of which is correspondent banking, which, again, these guys are familiar with. And the bank is putting together a package to help go through the initial challenge of subsidizing the uneconomic nature of doing correspondent banking in these countries. But the real issue is, how do you get past this for the future? Because there is a subscale issue, and there's an issue of making sure standards are met. And I think doing that the right way, through creating some kind of a central utility which is owned by the countries and maybe people like us and others, needs to be worked out so we can find a good, scalable, long-term, safe solution to keep the Pacific Islands in the financial mainstream. That kind of stuff would not happen easily without physically kicking the tires and meeting people on the ground and talking to them. Similarly, one of my biggest topics that I was trying to push is that while it's important to invest in resilient infrastructure, and we're doing this with ports and shoring up seawalls and the like in these islands, to help get guarantee of life, to sort of quality of life for a period, Tuvalu faces an existential threat, which is an estimate of eventually going under some years from now. And the Australian government has signed this treaty with them about both the 280 people a year who could come here and go back and forth with full status, but also recognizing their economic area, even if the island disappears. And I think the issue really is, therefore, what do you do between now and what looks like an inevitable time to ensure quality of life, where it's no regrets investments in the resiliency, but what does resiliency really constitute? Is it only infrastructure, or is it the people? And what do you do about their education and skilling, and what do you do about their healthcare so they can be productive during this period or productive as migrants to other countries? I think those topics were important to do personally, and I found it very useful to be there and build that connection.
Good. All right, who wants to ask a question of the World Bank President? If you'd like to, I can see Roland Raja, I can see a number of hands. So we'll start with Roland, who is the head of the Indo-Pacific Development Centre here at the Institute.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for those very interesting remarks. My question is whether you think big emerging economies like India and Indonesia, should they get a bigger say in the governance of the World Bank, given their rising economic weight, and given their centrality to the global net zero transition?
Yeah.
And if you think so, is this something you intend to push during your tenure?
Yeah. Look, I think that these institutions were created with a certain weight of proportion of being voting rights and the like at a time when a number of the countries didn't exist, let alone change their current scale and scope of who they are in the economy. But traditionally, your voting rights have got determined by a contribution of capital to the institution. The question really is giving voting rights without capital contribution? Already some have been given. Just to be clear, the emerging markets have a slug of voting rights in our institution already, even though they would not have contributed money. And the countries that have given up the most of their share, actually country number one is the United States, which has given up most of its share, even though its contribution of capital is well beyond its voting rights. So people have done that already. The question you're asking is, what's the next click in that? And to me, the next click in that has to keep evolving in that direction. There will be an opportunity when the IBRD next year in 2025 has to do a shareholding review of the institution. And that's the time we're going to have a chance to discuss this and then see where it takes us.
All right. Other hands? Yes, lady on the end.
Thank you so much for that. My question is, what measures does the World Bank recommend to ensure the developed countries' investment in the Pacific promote sustainability, particularly for developments without compromising on national sovereignty or fiscal health?
Look, we have a scorecard, we have objectives, we have ways of measuring what we're doing. Included in that scorecard is everything to do with sustainability while also aiming for development, whether it is poverty alleviation or women's rights or gender or education or healthcare. So that's kind of inbuilt in what we do. And nothing's going to change, whether that's in the Pacific Islands or in Africa. We have to do that in all these places. That's who we are. We don't always get it right. Development doesn't always get it right. And my objective is not to say I will get it right 100%, but I will be open to measuring mistakes and fixing them if things don't work out. That's what I'm trying to do.
I saw this gentleman in the second row, and then shell lines towards the back.
Thank you. Thank you very much, President, for those remarks. Scott Atkins. Ajay, thank you so much. Scott Atkins, Chair of Norton Rose Fulbright. The work that the World Bank has done in East Asia and the Pacific around digital transformation is very impressive. And I just wonder, leaving aside the AI challenges that you spoke of, is there more that digital transformation can do to supercharge the World Bank's work in a similar sense as your multiplier formula gave us earlier today as well?
But I think digitization is an unbelievable asset in breaking through the challenges of development. If you step back for a second, and I've talked about this publicly in my prior life as well, I believe the world's challenges are on three sides of a triangle. One side of the triangle is the issue of one versus many, what we now call inequality. And what I really mean is it's my growth, even if it's at your cost. That seems to have got embedded in a lot of places. The second side of the triangle is the challenge of humanity versus nature, which we're all now talking about as climate change and water and forestry and soil quality and degradation and all that. And the reason these two sides of the triangle don't fall down under their own weight is because the third side, unfortunately, keeps them stable. That's the worst of it, which is the trade-off between long-term and short-term. And all of us are incented, whether you're the CEO of an institution or the mayor of a city or a politician in a different phase, or teachers, the system incents you towards short-termism. And finding a way to thread the needle from that push and pull of short-termism versus long-term thinking is kind of what I think places like the bank can be good at. The thing that allows you to break through these log jam of the triangle is technology. whether it is new technology being developed or whether it is digitization, which enables the power of incumbency to be tackled in a way that you could not have done otherwise. So I'm very firmly embracing it. That's why I've created a special vertical in the Knowledge Bank only on digital. It's not that digital doesn't impact healthcare and education of people or their prosperity or the planet or infrastructure. But I think if we don't focus on it with digital public goods being set up the right way, so you can create the level foundation for private sector to then build its capabilities on it, then I think we've left an opportunity on the table. And I've just hired a gentleman who helped build out South Korea's governance of digital and build its basic platform as a country, and then went to work in the private sector. He's now joined us as the head of that. I think you should see us wanting to play a very active role, both on digital public infrastructure, but also data and the use of AI and its ethics and governance over the coming years.
Thank you. Shell?
Thank you for those remarks, President Banga. I'm Shell Lyons, a research fellow at the Lowy Institute who works on climate change. Over the past decade, we've seen two multilateral development banks capitalised, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and the New Development Bank. Could you speak to the World Bank experience of working with those banks and whether you see their establishment as a positive or negative addition to the public financing landscape?
Yeah. Look, first of all, I think our challenges are too many for me to believe that you shouldn't have more shoulders to the wheel. So I don't think that having more development banks right now is a particular problem. I think the problem is only if the resources get dissipated into so many places that we all become subscale. That would be a bad thing, right? But the reality is, to get development going, we're going to have to find a way to incorporate the private sector into this. That'll be a multiplier beyond all the resources of the development banks put together. So I'm kind of less hassled about multiple banks. If anything, I think we've all got strengths we can play off on each other. I have a very good partnership with all of those. From the day I came, I've been signing deals with them to work together. With the Asian Development Bank, I think we have the biggest opportunity to do things dramatically differently, including share procurement standards and due diligence standards so that a country with limited capacity at the other end, where we are both financiers of a project, doesn't have to do things twice. In the same way, we've recently launched, the World Bank has launched a digital platform for co-financing. So in the old days, if I found a project, old days, 2 years ago, found a project, we would have to go to the other multilateral banks to say, would you join us in this endeavor? And here, we're putting $1 billion, would you put in 200 million, 300 million, and create a coalition of the willing to get there? That's kind of inefficient. If you can create a digital platform where all projects found by any bank are put in, and we can all bid on it simultaneously, you create transparency and less duplication and less of a competitive mindset where competition is not our friend. And so that's the kind of thing I'm trying to work on with all of these institutions in this coming period of time.
I also saw Mel Pill's hand there.
Hello, Melanie Poole. I'm also a research fellow at the Indo-Pacific Development Centre for Climate Change. You talked a lot about the importance of adaptation in the Pacific, even migration and sovereignty. So how do you envisage to convince the private sector to invest in these kinds of issues, considering that these projects would be basically non-bankable?
Yeah. So to me, I've got this private sector group focused on renewable energy, not on adaptation. I can't expect the private sector to put money into something where their shareholders won't get the return that they could otherwise take that money and put it into a different bucket. That's just ground reality. So I'm not trying to change ground reality. I'm trying to say, let's take renewable energy, where today solar and wind are shown to be per unit of output cheaper than fossil fuel. If that be the case, why is it that private investors are not beating the doors down of every middle-income country? Forget about smaller, lower-income countries, but middle-income countries where there is scale and size opportunity. Why are they not breaking the doors down of that country to put billions at work to change the mix of energy output in that country? And what it comes down to is 5 things. And the first one is lack of clarity or predictability on regulatory policy. And I think sort of you can keep saying, but you know, why doesn't the private sector do it? Hey, they've got 2 places to put their money. With the things like the Inflation Reduction Act in the US and other industrial policy in the developed world, where you have predictability and consistency, why would you not choose to put money there as compared to somewhere else where you're not sure what they would do 2 years from today? And so having that clarity, and I give the example of India often on this, when Modi became Prime Minister, he made this statement very early that India is going to get to 30% of its mix by solar by 2030. One of those comments. But then he went at it and met the private sector and said, tell me what you need from me, both domestic and international, to get you to the 30%. And they gave him a list of 10 things like all of us did in my prior life when I went and met a government. The reality is you don't expect to get all 10. If you got 3 or 4, you would put your money to work. But you need them to be listening to you and paying attention and understanding your challenge. He did that. He gave them a few. Today, installed capacity in India, 42% is solar. But here's the problem. Generating capacity is not 42 because they haven't yet connected the grid properly and done the balancing of the grid you need to do to manage through the ups and downs of the variability of solar energy production. But they're still 6 years away from 2030. I would not be surprised if India made an announcement over the next 3-4 years of taking one big metropolis and converting it completely to renewable energy, because that's the kind of capacity they are building today. It's possible if you get some clarity on regulatory policy. Second big one that comes across is in political risk insurance, despite that. That we can help with. We do risk insurance across different parts of the institution inside a thing called MEGA and IFC, all our acronyms. We do stuff in that. I've put them together. So the back office is now one, making a simplified list of the guarantees we can do with simplified pricing. So you can do one due diligence across the institution for the insurance you might need. We've already more than, I think we're getting close to a 50-60% growth of our insurance business. My ambition is to take MEGA, which is the institution that provides insurance, and convert it from a secret weapon where the bad word is secret to a willing weapon, where the good word is willing. And that's where we're going with that one. The third one has to do with foreign exchange. And, you know, I used to be a banker who lost his way. And one thing I learned long back was that anybody who believes that they know how to fix foreign exchange, you should probably run in the opposite direction from that individual, because the unpredictability of forex markets are what they are. And if you expect someone to expect in dollars, euros, and yen in a 30-year investment and get paid back in local currency, even in a good middle-income market like Indonesia or India, that unhedged exposure of 30 years could cripple the idea of the spreadsheet that enables the investor to put the money to work. But there is no hedge that Westpac will sell me for 30 years on the Indonesian rupiah. If they do, he won't be at Westpac longer. So the issue is, I've known him, so don't. The issue really is, how do you find a solution to that? We're working our way through a couple of ideas there. One is to do risk sharing, multi-layered risk sharing with the country. And so there are a few thoughts there that I'm working my way through. I don't know that I have an answer to that one. And the other one, which I think is very attractive, is the idea of creating an originate to distribute model in this category. So if you went to Larry Fink at BlackRock and you said, hey, Larry, wouldn't you like exposure to drinking water or water projects in Africa? He would say yes. But if I went to him with 27 projects at sizes ranging from 20 million to 120, with bespoke governance and pricing in each, and I asked him to underwrite those to effectively create a securitizable pool, I think he would shoot himself. And so, because it doesn't make any sense. It's not economically viable for him to do it. So we're now working with a bunch of market-making banks and with BlackRock and with Standard & Poor's to try and find a way to create a originate to distribute packageable securities model for this kinds of projects so that the real money sitting in pension funds and the like can come to work on this space. That's going to be a 4 or 5 year effort, not a 1 or 2. But that, to me, is the big prize in this space.
Ajay, I'm going to squeeze in one final question, if I can, on cricket. I know you're a cricket fan. Mr. Modi's a cricket fan. Jai Shankar, the Indian External Affairs Minister, is a cricket fan. And Jai Shankar and I have joked over the years about writing a book together on the similarities between cricket and international policy. Because like foreign policy, cricket is a long game. Cricket is opaque. Sometimes a draw can be a win. Sometimes the qualities that a cricketer requires, discipline, intelligence, resilience, are what's required in international policy. So I want a chapter from you for our book. When you think about cricket...
Just to be clear, the chapter I would write would start by reminding you there is an Aussie who changed that thing and converted it to one-day cricket, and now we're down to, literally 20-ball cricket if we could do. So this long game has got a little lost in cricket, but never mind. Never mind. Never mind. Don't get the facts in the way of the story.
All right, fine. So tell us, is there something you've learned from cricket that you can apply to your career?
Little guy called Kerry Packer, but anyway,
Yeah. Cricket in your career, is there something you've learned?
I broke 2 fingers playing cricket when I was young.
Yeah.
They're still deformed.
Yeah.
The one thing I've learned is deformity doesn't go away. The pain doesn't go away, but you certainly learn how to do it better next time, because I didn't break any others.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. I will tell you that and it's a serious comment to a frivolous point, is that development is the long game. That's the long-term, short-term thing I was talking about. But development requires the willingness to take a few hard knocks. You're going to have to. Because there are no simple solutions in development. And when people try and draw black and white lines on every issue in development, as in everything else in life, the answer is in the grays. And finding a way to get that done, where you move the needle forward, where you move the scoreboard forward and keep the singles coming on the board while you're waiting for hitting the 4s and the 6s that'll move your score forward, you really have to keep that going.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ajay mentioned this is his 20th visit or so to Sydney, and I think you get a sense from his informality and his sense of humour and his quick-wittedness and his cricket knowledge, which he demonstrated at the end, why he's so popular with Australians. But I think you've also got a sense today from his energy and his intelligence and his ambition as to why he was such a fabulous appointee to the World Bank, even if he was a reluctant candidate. We want to thank you for your time and wish you all the best in your important work. Please thank Ajay Banga.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.